For the industrial hemp seed, you plant it with an air seeder, you let it go to full maturity, you combine it, you sell the grain, you can bale up the fiber. The CBD growing is hand picking and that kind of thing, and I'm trying to scale it up. So we're not doing any of that stuff. Last year we did 300 acres of it, all harvested by equipment, and then the thing that differentiates us about that side of the market is we're taking in the whole plant, drying it in the field, harvesting it all, and I can take the sticks out after with some processing equipment. So that's the difference. This is industrial hemp for cannabinoid production, so CBD plants. This is a different genetic. We have a few different genetics out here actually, and it's hard to really explain, but these are all female plants out here because you want them to flower. If there were male plants out here, then they would reproduce and you'd have seeds everywhere. So as you can tell, this is like 2 weeks into flowering or so, these white little wisps here, that's the flowering part. So in the next 4 or 5 weeks, you'll start seeing denser bud forming here, which is just tightly packed flowers coming together. So this has quite a few more weeks left on it to finish. But they're photosensitive plants, so they are changed by the amount of daylight. So on the parallel where North Dakota is, it's actually one of the prime locations for the cannabis plant because of our daylight cycle. We get 18, 19-hour days sometimes. So that's why they grow tall. So there's 2 stages. There's veg stage and then there's flowering stage. The veg stage is from its infancy all the way up until the days get shorter than maybe 15 or 16 hours, and then it transfers into flowering mode. So then in the first few weeks of flowering mode, maybe 2 or 3, it's called elongation, meaning they'll put on a lot of weight as far as the stalks go, so they can start supporting all the weight it's going to be having on it of the buds and flowers. So they get tall, wide, bushy, and then after about 3-4 weeks, then you'll start seeing little flowers form on there. And yeah, so this is of only about 25 acres here of our CBD production, and we also do for hemp grain for food and fiber. So that's not out here, but similar properties, just a lot heavier seed populations. So they grow maybe 8 feet tall, and there's no limbs on it at all except the top 18 to 24 inches, and then it's all seed right there. So then you just harvest that with a regular combine. Finally, USDA finished their rules on the hemp program from the 2018 Farm Bill. So now it is based off the states can decide whether they stick to the pilot program or go under the regulations that USDA is setting forth. And I think both North Dakota and Minnesota are now under USDA's regulations. So no more pilot program. It's just it, and then we can grow it. CBD or cannabinoid genetics. Cannabinoids I call because that's THC, CBD, all the 99 other ones. There's tons of different cannabinoids. It's all genetic based now. So this is for CBD, and down in that far corner is CBG, which is another cannabinoid. And that one is actually considered the mother cannabinoid because from CBG derives CBD and THC. It's like where those two come from. So it's just a little bit different of a genetic, but so yes, we plant this middle of May ideally, and most people transplant this stuff. Now, so what you see here looks a little different than what everybody else is doing because they're going to give it 6 feet apart. They're going to have 6 feet this way, 6 feet this way, and give the plants as much room as they can to grow. That's transplanting. This would have been just from right here that way, 120,000 seeds. That would have been 120,000 plants that we would have had to put in with either by hand or a mechanical device that dropped them in. So my theory right off the bat was I wasn't going to do any hand work at all. So I tinkered with our $500,000 planters that we already own, and made some nice discs for them. I made literally by hand. We made our own discs to plant this stuff. So we just did this with a planter. I think here, these are 15,000 seeds an acre. Okay. So this is kind of a trial run, but it works better, and it's hard to tell right in this spot. If we walk in there a little, I can show you, but the closer they are together, then the energy gets pushed to the top of the plant. So then you don't have to cut so low and you don't have branches hanging under the ground. You wouldn't use the fiber from these genetics because they get too woody. Like the ideal conditions for fiber production only are before flowering. If the plant goes into flowering, then their stalks start to get woody, as you can see down in here. Like, obviously there's some liquid in there, but they get really hard and they're too woody to make anything out of it. So with CBD or cannabinoid genetics, the fiber and the herd material isn't good enough for anything really. Sure. It'd be the seed genetics and the fiber genetics that do that. So here's the fiber of the hemp plant. This isn't the best quality because of the genetics for this, but that's the fiber. And then this white part here, right here, that's the herd. And this is what they're gonna make building materials out of. It's spongy almost, cork-like, and it's porous. And then it's hard to tell this stage in the plant, but it's hollow. There's a hole down the middle of it. So it works really well for animal bedding, for absorption, and it has some natural microbial properties and stuff. So this herd, this white stuff, is the building materials type of stuff. And again, these genetics aren't built for this, so these aren't the best for that, but yes, you could separate this out of this plant and use it. So for us, we planted these a lot closer together than most people will. And the reason why is down here. So the stalks here, maybe an inch around, inch and a half diameter. Last year when we had the plants further apart, they were 3 inches in diameter, which made it very difficult to mechanically harvest. So we put them a bunch closer together, so then the sun can't get down to the bottom, which pushes all the energy up to the top half of the plant. And you can see a bunch of the little leaves in here. These little leaves here aren't gonna produce anything. So we could cut it up from like here up or even here up, because all the good stuff will be funneled right up into here. There's probably 5 or 6 or 7 more weeks of flowering on these, which would bring us into, that's 2 months from now. So honestly, mid to end of November or October. It will smell very skunky when the flowers start coming on here heavier. And then the last week, they'll start to smell like the genetics they're brought to. So last year's stuff was Hawaiian haze. So it honestly smelled like Fruity Pebbles. It smelled like skunk all the way up until the last week. And then the terpenes, which are the flavonoids of it, start coming out. And then it smells like pineapple or Fruity Pebbles or something around the whole field. I wanted to get in on the ground floor of something that I thought was going to be pretty substantial, which is another reason we got into hemp. Is it's a specialty crop. We have all the stuff to do it already. So it was an easy transition. We just had to make room for it. So the hemp seed is 1 amino acid short of a complete protein. So it's a superfood. My goal in the hemp is to have it on everybody's dinner table every day, because it should be, like everything else. And then the fiber market comes in and building materials we go. So I have big hopes.